If you like the sweet science, get ready to talk boxing on the Gloved Fist podcast with top boxing writers Frank Latirzo and Jack Hirsch. Frank, a former amateur boxer out of Philadelphia, writes for NY Fights and can be seen on the Boxing Channel. Jack, an amateur boxer who competed in the New York Golden Gloves, was a 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association. And now, here's Frank Latirzo and Jack Hirsch.
And we're back. Welcome to Gloved Fist. My name is Frank Latirzo. I am a former writer. I try to be a full-time observer, and I am joined by Mr. Boxing, Jack Hirsch, who is the former 6-term president of the International Boxing Writers Association. Jack, is that right?
A Boxing Writers Association.
Boxing Writers Association.
BWAA, and let them figure it out. If they Google it, they'll come up with baseball, but who cares?
Well, Jack, I don't know how you're doing. We had a couple fights to talk about. We have a guest coming on tonight.
Well,
the fight we had to talk about was very exciting, but you want to talk about the other one first?
Well, we're going to talk. Well, I guess who's going to be on in about 15 minutes? Robert Newman, the editor of Fight News, a really knowledgeable guy, really knowledgeable guy. And we'll get to a variety of topics with him once he comes on. The big news of the weekend was the heavyweight fight, Fabio Wardley being stopped in 11 rounds by Daniel Dubois. Daniel Dubois, I don't want to use the word, Frank, revived his career, because despite getting stopped by Usyk in his last fight, he was still in the mix, okay? Had he lost this one, then he would be in a position of reviving his career. And he won this fight, and the way it started out for Dubois, virtually the first punch of the fight, a long right hand to the temple knocks him down. And I'm thinking, Frank, this fight might be over in less than a minute. And this is the end of Daniel Dubois. But he hung in there, boxed well, got dropped again a couple of rounds later, but otherwise was in command of the fight. You and I both picked Fabio Wardley. On reflection, that was a mistake. I think both of us, and I shouldn't be talking for you, though, put too much stock in how he stopped James Parker at the end of the fight, because I know you especially were high on Parker. So we kind of remembered the ending, and like you pointed out in the past, Dubois is kind of a flawed fighter who folded up against Usyk twice when the going got rough, and we thought with Wardley's pressure that would be the case. But Wardley himself was flawed. All he was doing was swinging for home runs. He was swinging for the fences all the time, and that's not how you usually win fights.
Jack, my pick was against Dubois more than it was on Wardley, because I told you this when it happened. I think that he lost his nerve, his gumption. I don't want to say his heart, but he lost his gumption and his nerve when he dropped Usyk, which I thought should have been a legit body shot, was ruled a low blow. Usyk milked it, took 5 minutes, came back, and he stopped Dubois. And to me, when that fight continued, I thought Dubois, just the life was sucked out of him. Then when they fought the rematch and Dubois was talking like it was going to be different, and I said it'll be a rerun, only a little easier. And then when, like Tyson Fury said today, you look back and you think Dubois couldn't drop Hrgovic, couldn't drop Big Baby. It's like the only guy he really looked like a killer against that was elite was Anthony Joshua, and he dropped him 3 or 4 times. So my pick was against Dubois. I thought he would have a good beginning, and as Sonny Liston would say, and a terrible end. I thought he'd be in the lead, land big shots, but not finish the job, and then get stuck. But it was the opposite, Jack. I got to give him props. He got up twice. Lennox Lewis or Mike Tyson never did that. He got up twice, and he won by stoppage, and you could make a case. Now, I didn't see the fight live. I saw it after the fact. So I'm not going to comment about should have been stopped sooner or later or earlier. But I'm just going to say that he gets big props for that, coming back with a stoppage win. And in closing, I would just say this. The fact that Dubois won the fight in the manner that he did, to me, is just another layer of proof that Usyk is the king of the heavyweights. He is the premier heavyweight in the world, And until he is defeated or retired, he gets the benefit of all doubts because Dubois could fight him 25 times and he'd lose 25 times.
You know what bothered me about this fight is people who are sports fans but not boxing fans hear, oh, it's a world championship fight. It was not a world championship fight. It was for the WBO heavyweight title.
Which is a joke.
There'll be a few sanctioning bodies, and I kind of made a comparison with Keith Engel this morning. Calling Dubois the world heavyweight champion is like announcing that the Buffalo Bills are the champions of the National Football League. I mean, if you said that, it would be outrageous. I mean, it would be laughable. But it was a great fight. It was a great fight. Should it have been stopped earlier? It should have been stopped earlier. The problem with fights like this is Wardley always had a chance because, as you pointed out, Dubois is flawed. You never know what could happen with him at any point in the fight. And even against Joshua, he was hurt right before he delivered a knockout punch, and that was only in the 5th round. So you had to feel Wardley was always dangerous, as hurt as he was, but he entered a danger zone around, the 9th round. And you'd see the way he would walk back to his corner, and Wardley was never going to quit. It was his corner's responsibility to pull him out. But I think the corners get so caught up in winning and losing, and it's hard to pull the plug on a fight, end the fight. I realize it's hard if you're in the corner when you feel your guy still has a chance, but chances of him getting seriously hurt were just as great as they were of him turning the fight around. Now, let me just close on that. I remember a former lightweight fighter, good guy, Brian Adams, former lightweight from New York, once told me, if you don't allow fights like this to go on, like Diego Corrales against Jose Castillo, you're never going to get a legendary fight, a legendary ending. Okay, if you don't give a guy a chance to come back. And listen, if I was in Las Vegas for the first Castillo-Corrales fight, when Corrales was on his hands and knees crawling in the ring, okay, getting knocked down twice, spitting out his mouthpiece, I would have stopped the fight. And as a result, you wouldn't have gotten that legendary finish, a fight for the ages. But listen, I don't want to err too much on the side of safety to the point where it gets to be obvious it was stopped way too early. But a fight like this, Wardley should have been pulled out. And you want to know something, Frank? I bet he was wishing he was pulled out to save his dignity, but they wouldn't pull him out until he started getting battered in the 11th round, and then the ref finally stepped in. But I hold the corner and the physicians more responsible than the referee, because they could have stopped it in the corner between rounds at any point, really, after the 8th round, certainly after the 9th round.
The problem is you have in Wardley a guy that showed durability and toughness, and you had a guy in Dubois who's kind of, I don't want to say look for a way out, but it doesn't take as much to convince him he's not going to win as it does Wardley. So I think that they got caught up in the fact that he was still one punch away from turning the fight. And I've been around guys that have those great chins, and sometimes you just believe that they are impervious, they can't be hurt, and they'll find a way to make it through. This time it didn't work out that way. He took a lot of shots. But again, Jack, it just goes to show that Usyk, to me, is far and above the guy. I mean, we can talk about Italma, who I think has a great future. We can talk about Cabal, who has a great future, who looks good. But it's like Usyk, it's his division. It really is. The problem with Usyk, Jack, is going to be, look, nobody's going to want to see him fight Dubois, even though he won and looked good winning in the end. The problem that Usyk has, he has to get out soon, or he has to fight Italma. And the problem with that is, if he fights Italma, there's a big risk. If he beats him, he doesn't get a lot of mileage out of it. And if he loses, he takes a hit.
Yeah, the heavyweight division has separate tiers. There's tier 1 that's Usyk, head and shoulders above everyone. Then there's tier 2 Otama, the future of the division, supposedly. Then there's tier 3, the big Fury Joshua fight coming up. And then there's tier 4, all the rest of the guys, maybe contenders coming up the rear. Those are the basic tiers you have. I want to say something, Frank. You kind of outlasted me. Like I said, I gave in and I got the zone package. I felt it was worth it. But if you pay all at once, it's not $5.99 a year, it's $4.49 a year, and that includes tax. And it's a little over $37 a month. And just for last Saturday's show alone, Dubois, Wardley, that kind of made it worth it. And then you had Bryce Taylor, the heavyweight who we had on the show, the heavyweight who lectured you, Frank, on why he doesn't like
he doesn't have to run.
He won in the second round. He actually looked good. He actually has potential, Frank. He really does. If the guy just applies himself and trains hard, I honestly think he could be a legitimate top 10 contender. I really do. But when he gets to a higher level, it'll catch up to him if, he's not fully dedicated.
Jack, talk about the zone for a second, because as you know, I'm a big critic of it. I think it's too hard to get through. I don't like the fact, and I was under the impression that if you buy the big package, you still have to pay for the pay-per-view fights. And you just said that's not the case. If you buy the big package, it comes to $37 a month and you get everything.
They gimmick you a little bit. They might have a loophole if there's a major fight. They might try to tack on a little price. They promise you 12 pay-per-views a year, like one a month. But the pay-per-views they give you are ones, Frank, you would like Boots Ennis, Xander Zayas. That's your type of fight. That's my type of fight, What might they do if let's say hypothetically Boots knocks out Zayas, looks sensational, creates a buzz, and Crawford comes out of retirement to fight him? I have a hard time believing that would be part of that package, that they might try a little gimmick on top of it. But for the fights that they're giving you, I think it's pretty good. Look, even the Usyk fight against the kickboxer, that's not a pay-per-view worthy fight. But you have on the undercard, you have Richard Torres against Frank Sanchez. That's a nice heavyweight fight. Those are the type of fights we like. We'd rather have quality.
The thing is, Jack, what I don't like is the sad part is the fight Saturday night between Wardley and Dubois was a fight that if new boxing fans had exposure to, they could bring more people into the tent and there'd be more fans. But it's so hard to find the fights. And then I think Mike DeLisa said that the fight was shown on Amazon Prime. Did you know that?
So I know I didn't know that. Sergio Ramirez, and if you had to pay, it would have been pay-per-view and on Amazon Prime. Just like Sergio Ramirez and David Benavidez was on both the Zone and Amazon Prime. And I subscribed to Amazon Prime. And I thought, let me check, is it on here by any chance? And when I went on Amazon Prime for Benavidez and Sergio Ramirez, it said you had to pay.
That's what I saw, but he said that this time it wasn't that way. But apparently he's wrong, because I tried to do Ramirez and Benavidez, and I saw, because I have Amazon Prime too, and I saw that you had to pay. So then he was wrong about that. So that just shoots that theory out of the water, because if it was, and if you got it for free on Amazon Prime, if you were a subscriber, they did a terrible job promoting that because nobody knew it. But now we know why nobody knew it, because it wasn't the case.
But they're giving you enough quality. Like on May 30th, for example, Dmitry Bivol is back in the ring, okay? Fighting again. He's fighting in Russia. I'm not really familiar with his opponent, but we know Bivol is one of the classiest boxers in the sport. And a week ago, Inoue and Nakatani. I mean, so there are enough quality fights. And as much as I despise Keyshawn Davis's behavior, he's fighting.
He's coming up.
Yeah, he's coming up. Now, I heard Shakur Stevenson reportedly, was reported by Chris Mannix, is signing with Dana White Super Boxing.
I was going to bring that up.
But Shakur's not an attraction. Shakur's a great fighter. He's not an attraction. And I think Dana White's going to see that. You have to match him with an opponent. No, it's going to be a mega fight, like a Tank Davis, Shakur. That's like a mega type matchup. But we don't want to see Shakur Stevenson just shut opponents down and win boring decisions. And that's what you
But Jack, the fact that he got Shakur Stevenson, that's still a big get. That's still a big fish in the boxing pool, which means it will open the door. Shakur may be hard to match, but it will open the door, and other guys close to that ilk will start looking that way. That's why I said don't bet against Dana White.
I'm going to bet on Eddie Hearn to outlast Dana White in their battle. But I will say this. You know who the big fish is? If they could somehow get him, David Benavidez. He's with Al Heyman now with the PBC. If somehow Dana White swoops in and he signs David Benavidez and adds them, that's big. That would be the equivalent of a team throwing Aaron Judge away from the New York Yankees. It would be along those lines.
But every journey starts with a step, Jack, and it's like it just seems that White is starting to get some more guys in the fold, and he's getting up there with some of those guys that have a little bit more, a little more clout. Benavidez would be the ultimate get right now because he's probably the hottest fighter in boxing.
We have our guest who's going to blend into our conversation. Great if we could bring him on. Now, do I call you Robert Newman, Boxing Bob? What's the best name?
You can call me whatever you want, Jack.
Okay.
But most people within boxing call me Boxing Bob or
Boxing
Bob. Fine.
One of the best journalists. Okay, what can I say? Who covers the sport? No one covers the sport more comprehensively than you, Bob. And I got to apologize to you on the air because you've been the best kept secret. When I had more clout to maybe help push for you to get awards, you didn't come on my radar at the time. And now you're coming on the radar like more and more when we see what you do. And I've read the site Fight News for a long time when it was with Flat Top, and now it's transitioned over the years. But just tell us, how difficult is it to run a very active boxing website the way you do? This is Frank Laterzo, my co-host here, by the way.
How you doing, Frank? Good to meet you. How difficult is it? Well, I mean, I guess it depends on what metric we're using to measure the difficulty. I'll say it's time consuming. So in that sense, there's some difficulty, but it just takes a lot of time. There's, sometimes you're searching for news. Sometimes you're getting bombarded with press releases from the various promoters and management. And sometimes it's just a matter of, are there enough hours in the day? Are there enough days in the week, to get the news out to everybody? I'm definitely seeing a different side of it, and sometimes I'm wondering how Carl Freitag did this for 27 years, but he did. And I was on board pretty much right at the beginning in '99 as a journalist and a photographer. And, I developed a close relationship with Carl over the years. And unfortunately, we lost Flat Top. Maybe 6 years ago, something like that. I think we're coming up on that anniversary in June or July. And then Carl kind of ran it, solo. And when I say solo, obviously, there's the contributions of some of the diehard, journalists and photographers like myself that have been there over the years, but just running the site, keeping it going, getting things posted, and troubleshooting when need be. It's a lot different. So August will be the first year anniversary of the transition after Carl decided to hang up his gloves, so to speak.
Now let me cut in. Now you cover fights all over. You're Frank. Bob's from upstate New York, and one of the fighters we had on this show we've kind of adopted him in a sense that we're rooting from Bryce Mills. Mills, okay, you've covered a good number of his fights, okay? And how big is he upstate New York? Is Russell Peltz exaggerating when he says Bryce Mills is like a rock star up in upstate New York?
I'll say, specifically Syracuse, but yeah, he's his stature is growing, and he is largely responsible for a good portion of the attendance of fight fans at the Turning Stone Casino, which has kind of become his home ring, so to speak. It's just about 30 minutes outside of Syracuse in Verona, New York, where Bryce is from, and I happen to be from Syracuse as well, and that's kind of my home turf in terms of reporting and covering shows. And that arena will hold around 4,500, and Bryce is at times has been responsible for probably half the ticket sales. Whatever they have there, more than half of the sales are probably due to Bryce.
You could see that because he has a style that's very fan friendly. And he's a guy that when you hear him talk and, some of the things he says and the way he comports himself, he's an easy guy to root for and like. And I think that is a breath of fresh air for this sport because we need guys like that. And the fact that he's taking on Vargas, and credit to Vargas in their next fight. I mean, both guys undefeated. It's a crossroads fight. We don't see much of that today. So it's like we need guys like that in this sport, and he needs a little bit bigger profile. And if he wins this fight, I'm sure he'll get it.
Oh, you're right, Frank. I mean, Bryce is definitely a breath of fresh air. And in terms of, being a rock star here in Syracuse, he's the biggest thing we've had. I actually talked to him before his fight at the Turning Stone on the 28th, when he was fighting for his first belt, a US WBC silver title. And it's funny, he's so
he's the kid next door.
Yeah, he's the kid next door. He's so polite and he's so young. I mean, I don't know if he's 24 yet. But the last fighter we had of any significance from Syracuse was Frankie Lyles. And unfortunately, I actually had to double check. Frankie, who won a super middleweight title, had many defenses of it for the WBA, never had one single pro fight in Syracuse in his entire career. And Bryce,
when he was fighting in Atlantic City, was big at the time, right?
Say that again.
During his heyday, a lot of the Atlantic City was drawing the big fights at that time. Yeah, Atlantic City had made a big dent in the action, in Vegas, in the East Coast, and he did there. But then during his reign as super middleweight champ, he actually took the money, what was then the big ticket purses, and fought a lot and defended in Europe. And, he had a good run, but never had even one pro fight even before he was champ coming up in Syracuse.
I mean, would there be any long shot possibility that if Bryce Mills wins this fight on the undercard, Bucinis, Sanders, Zayas, could fight for title in Syracuse? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm probably wrong. The last two big shows, title bouts that I could remember in Syracuse like decades ago, Sugar Ray Leonard and Bonds, and of course, Bacchus upsetting Napoles in 1970. Have there been,
world title fights, I think you're right, in the city of Syracuse, so not Turning Stone, not a suburb or anything. I think you're right. Matter of fact, it's interesting you bring up Leonard Bonds. That was my very first pro fight I ever attended. I think I was 16 at the time, and in the Carrier Dome, and they got a pretty good crowd there. That was HBO televised. It had a great undercard. If you remember what they were calling Tomorrow's Champions, some of the guys that I think a lot of them were like
Johnny Bumpus.
Exactly.
Ayala.
Yep, Tony Ayala, Bumpus, Alex Ramos. was on the undercard. So that was a good show. I remember that very well. But yeah, there hasn't really been much of a buzz. And I mean, good for Bryce, to get the Vargas fight. Unfortunately, he won't be on the Hall of Fame weekend card at the Turning Stone. But Russell kind of had that in his back pocket after he let it be known I think 2 days after Bryce's recent fight in Rochester, New York.
We're going to talk about that show in a moment.
Okay, yeah, but that's why Russell, didn't couldn't commit to Bryce being on that, because this fight I think was pretty solidly in the works. And as Russell said, Bryce is daring to be great. And yeah, this is a crossroad fight. You don't see too many young fighters at this stage of their career willing to
on the verge of a ranking.
But you always learn something new, no matter how long you've been in the business. And that recent fight with Bryce Mills won, main event in Rochester, no one got paid, as it turned out. I mean,
unfortunately, that's true. That's true.
It Russell is kicking himself that and I love Russell's line that his attitude normally, everyone's guilty until proven innocent.
Yeah.
So he went backwards this time. And there was a $20,000 bond. But when you consider all the purses and this and that, it kind of was a minimal risk. I mean, I'm surprised things like that don't happen more. It didn't shock me it happened. It shocks me it doesn't happen more.
I agree, Jack.
Yeah, unfortunately, that $20,000 bond, according to Russell's estimation, is probably only a quarter of what the promoter's payroll was going to be. And of course, that's fighters, that's commission, and everybody in the commission, including referees, judges, ring physicians. Nobody got paid. So it was a bad gamble. I don't want to come out and say it was anything nefarious on the promoter's part, but they sold 1,800 tickets in an arena that can hold 10,000. So, it was on Triller. I don't know how many, subscriptions for the stream they sold, at $20, but, really outside of upstate New York, nobody knows who Bryce is, and hopefully that'll change, after the show in June, but, they weren't going to make any money there. And it was a big gamble, I mean, being a promoter is a gamble, but to take a kid, and they felt that, Bryce's fans would travel. It was a horrible day. It was like monsoon rainstorm all day long.
How far away is Rochester from Liverpool?
How far? I'm sorry?
Yeah, how far? Bryce is from Liverpool. How far is Rochester?
It's like 70 miles. Or, probably Liverpool's a little more west on the way to Rochester, so maybe, maybe 65. So it's an hour and a half.
Okay.
Just unfortunately, it was a bad gamble. They, shot for the stars and went big with a big arena. And, Russell felt that they would be true to their word, and they were going to be able to pay Bryce's purse. And in the end, nobody got paid.
Well, that's got to be heartbreaking for the fighters and all the people there. But a young guy coming up like that who's all enthused, and then look, they all say they don't do it for money; they do it for the love and the glory. But when you don't get paid, that really takes a lot out of you.
And let me tell you too, Frank and myself have talked about this. Finding fights where you could get it, being overcharged. But had we known Bryce was fighting on Triller or whatever, we would have paid the $20.
Oh, sure.
We like the kid to find the fight, and the word doesn't get out, or if it does, it's sometimes so hard to get the fight. I remember when it first came on the Zone, you're trying to give them your money at times, and it's hard to get on there, some of these pay-per-view outlets.
Yeah, and you have, and sometimes you have shows, especially now with more and more outlets and these smaller $20 pay-per-view options. You'll have shows competing on the same night at the same time. Granted, now you can buy the thing afterwards if you want to try to stay away from the result. You can still watch it after the fact. But, I'm sure, there was a time where, fans felt like, man, we're not getting enough boxing. And now really there are so many options. It's, I think there was a time where we never thought it would even be possible to have this much. I laugh when people say, oh, you don't see boxing anymore. It's coming out of our ears. You can get it all over the place.
But Bob, it's hard to find. And if you're not a hardcore guy, you don't know where to look or how to get it. I mean, look at the fight we had this past week with Wardley and Dubois. That's one of the better heavyweight fights that we've had in years. Think what that would have done to 12 and 15-year-old kids that haven't been exposed to boxing. But the way Jack and I found it, by on TV and being exposed to those guys, it sucked us in. And here we are now as old guys, and we're still kind of following. Today, there's just so many more choices, and it's just harder to find and follow. And that is my beef.
Well, I mean, I'll say, I think it depends, up in my neck of the woods in Buffalo, you guys might remember, oh gosh, now I'm forgetting it. Ross Thompson. He fought Fernando Vargas for his title back in the day. And in the beginning, when DAZN came out, it was largely thought of as a phone app. And he said, I'm not, down with this telephone boxing. But it's actually an app now. If a lot of people have smart TVs, you just download the app, just like any other channel. You've got things like, Hulu and Tubi and YouTube TV and all that. You just download it and it's there. I mean, what was, when we were younger and HBO was a different thing that you had to add on to your cable subscription, and then Showtime. For 15, 16-year-olds now that, we would like to become fans of boxing to grow the next generation of boxing fans, I think, these apps and things are almost innate for them. It's like second nature. So for older folks like us, I was kind of a little intimidated at first, but
I'm still intimidated by tech.
I'm intimidated. I don't know how to get DAZN on my TV set. I watch it on my iPad to fight.
I think first you have to have a smart TV. So
tech savvy to help me out.
But Bob, they're all smart TVs today. You can't buy a TV that's not a smart TV.
Well, I'm just saying it depends. Unless you're a relic that still has a TV from 15 years ago that that you haven't updated yet.
I have a TV from let's say 8 years ago. Is that a smart TV automatically? Probably not.
No.
You
watch Barry Ellis on that TV.
So if I get a smart TV, is DAZN automatically? I could get it on that TV, no problem.
You can get it. It won't be on there when you plug it in at home, but on the television, you have to go into your, I don't know, somewhere in the settings, and then just basically like on your phone, go to like the TV's version of the App Store and just look for DAZN or type it in and find it and, just install it. I mean, it's not super intuitive, but you can fiddle your way through it. Or like I said, you get your grandkid or something like that, who, that generation just seems to have been born knowing how to do this stuff. Yeah. But it's possible.
The newspaper business, okay, it's not as relevant as it used to be. Do you feel that's a big advantage to websites? Like you have, Fight News is informational for the most part. You have features and you have diversity on your website, but I think the goal of Fight News has always been to give information, and that's what we like to get,
Right? And
every boxing fan I know, the first thing they do when they get up, when they go to the net, they go to Fight News.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. And the only downside for me now is I can't go there to see what's on there because I'm the guy that put it on there the night before when I went to sleep. So I have to wake up and look and see what's going on and get incoming news posted. And, You know, now
How
I
long does it
can't
take
even.
you to do that, Bob? Say you get a story. Let's just say there's a big fight let's just say it breaks that Tank Davis is going to fight. He got some kind of a pass, or they made some kind of a plea deal, whatever issues are, and it comes out that he's okay to fight, eligible to fight. How long from the time you hear that until the time it's posted on Fight News? What is the lag there?
So, you know what? That's a good question. It depends. Like if I am not one now with social media, which I think you guys will agree. I've had to tell people there's a difference between social media and true media, which I consider Fight News to be, true media. If there's something on social media, I am going to kind of dig and investigate and not necessarily post something on Fight News as fact. I might, dig around and see if I can get enough to kind of at least come up with a paragraph or so. You'll also notice if you are on the site now since last summer, there's not one article that doesn't have some sort of image with it. So I've got to find, if I get information that doesn't have a photo with it, I've got to dig something up either from our archives or mostly from our archives or from the people that we normally, get photos from, Golden Boy and Matchroom or things like that. And we always give credit for the photo. So it all depends. Now, if I actually get news sent to me, via email from a promoter or from a manager or whatever, that's going to be up within like single digit minutes. I'll come up with a headline if there isn't one already. I'll go through, kind of make sure there's, no typos or grammatical issues or misspellings or things like that. Find a photo and bam, it's up. So it depends on, even if I'm fed like in a whole article with a headline and an image, it still takes a few minutes. I might have to crop the image or whatever to make sure it fits our template. But if it's something where I'm just hearing whispers, I've gotten things sent to me that I'm not going to put up until I know that it's 100% true or the source is legit. We get things from PR folks that I know are legit, but something that I see on Twitter or X or Instagram, and these nowadays people are making like homemade posters, with AI. They'll put two fighters together and they'll put a fake date or whatever.
Wait. So tell me, is this story legit? And Frank, I know will enjoy this. Johnny Manziel is looking to get into boxing now and have an actual pro fight. I mean, is that?
Well, I did see that. I didn't post anything about that because there wasn't enough meat to the story, and I probably had a ton of other real stories that I had to deal with, but I did see that somewhere as I was traipsing across the internet, and a lot of stuff I'll see on my phone, whereas I'm still kind of old school and I'm actually posting and doing the editing and things on a desktop computer. But in a pinch, I have been able to do things on my phone when I'm at an airport and things are, coming through. But I did see that. And, I try to shy away from word on the street is, type of stories, like until I know it's legit, because there is so much of that out there already on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, Instagram.
Bob, I don't know what to believe anymore. I see things and I don't know what to believe.
Well, I'm, kind of like borrowing a line from Russell. I'm, if it means I'm going to be late with a real story or whatever, I'm going to be skeptical. It's false until I know it's true. So kind of paraphrasing.
I didn't hear the Johnny Manziel thing. And Jack, how old is he now? He played at Texas A&M at what, 208, 209? So if he's 20 back then, he's probably older. I mean, he's got to be in his mid-30s now.
I think.
Yeah, so he's going to start boxing in his mid-30s.
If you haven't, I don't have to tell you guys, if you haven't had serious boxing experience, to just take it up at an age. But I'm going to tell you this, though, that's interesting. Boxers usually aren't the greatest athletes and the greatest athletes usually don't make good boxers. So I don't understand the logic behind that. But you could take the most phenomenal athlete, the decathlon champion or whatever, and you could train them from here to eternity, and odds are he's not going to be a world-class fighter. So
no, that's true. I mean, we can all go back, to Ed Too Tall Jones and
Mark
so many other athletes after that.
Yeah. The Wardley Dubois fight, I was talking with Frank about it earlier. Do you think it should have been stopped earlier? Were you comfortable with it being stopped when it was?
It definitely should have gone no longer than it did. And I would have had no problem if it was stopped even during either one of the ringside physician checks between, I think, rounds 9 and 10 and rounds 10 and 11. Wardley is definitely a case of a guy that is too tough for his own good. And when Frank Warren was being interviewed post-fight about some of the options for Dubois, I literally cringed when
he said rematch.
The first thing he said was rematch. I'm not kidding. I cringed like, I can't even see him in a gym for 6 months.
Well, he didn't say when. Frank Warren didn't say when exactly.
No, but I just after seeing a guy take a beating like that, I mean, I know this may be over the top, but my initial, and yes, it's his first loss, but holy cow, that loss was worth like 3 to 5 losses.
He may never be the same.
Yeah, that's my feeling. And I thought rematch, right now, just at that moment, my gut feeling was I don't even want to see this guy in a ring again for his own health. I actually, for the first 27 years of my involvement with Fight News, I had a career that ended up being, well, if you include my time in the Navy, 42 years in healthcare. I was a hospital corpsman in the Navy and then a respiratory therapist. So I actually took care of a boxer that eventually passed away from his injuries from a fight here in Syracuse back in '89. And, it's no joke. So I definitely see, a different side of it from a different perspective, maybe than sometimes, even the hardest core fan does. And yeah, I couldn't, I'm sure he will fight again, but yeah, my initial gut instinct was don't even talk about Fabio Wardley getting in the ring again right now.
Well, look at the case with Errol Spence. You would think he's set for life with all the money he's made, very comfortably the rest of his life.
I would hope so.
He's back in the ring. I mean, what could he gain? I mean, he could gain a little more money, but he should be financially set. If he's not, then there's something drastically wrong.
But both of you gentlemen know when that bug is in you and when you have that success and you're used to the lights and you look at Crawford's gone now. Spence could rationalize, well, you know what? I lost to a guy that's a legitimate all-time great. He had a good night. I had a bad night. I've taken time off. I see what's out there. I think I can do it. They're willing to pay me a lot of money to do it. It's hard for these guys to walk away like that. In fact, the other night, a friend of mine were having a conversation about how many fighters, and we can go from 1900 through today, how many can we say in any weight class got out at the exact right time? Gene Tunney, Marciano, maybe Lennox Lewis,
right?
Monzon. How many guys got out at the exact right time?
But I believe there's a certain line. And that if a fighter fights too long, even if he's a winning fighter, he takes enough punishment where it's going to catch up to him maybe 30 years down the line when he's 60, 70 or whatever. I mean, that's what happens. They quit when they're like 37, 38, and they might feel, oh, thank heavens, I'm getting out with all my marbles. I'm good. I'm this, I'm that. But down the line, I mean, they never look at it in the back end. I think an Andre Ward got out on the good side of the line, maybe barely, but even Floyd Mayweather fighting these exhibitions. I mean, you get hit during these exhibitions. You're sparring for the exhibitions. You might not be hit a lot, but you are getting hit. And I just don't like the toll it takes on these guys.
Yeah, it's cumulative, but in the case of Wardley and Spence, that both of those guys only have one loss right now. But in the case of Spence, I really feel like that car accident contributed to not just how great Crawford was, but all the other fights that Spence had, nobody ever did that to him. He didn't ever react to getting hit like that. And I'm not saying, Crawford, is the biggest, one-hitter knockout artist, because he's not. Great tactician, great technical fighter, decent power. But he was, and I'm not taking anything away from Crawford's victory, but Spence, I guess the point I'm trying to make is Spence already had some damage coming into that fight. And I'm just talking about it from the physical standpoint, the toll that it's taking on him.
But Bob, did you say that before the fight? I mean, you're saying it now. Before the fight, I don't know who you picked. Did you think it was a pick'em fight? Are you thinking this way after the fight? Because this is something Frank and I have discussed.
No, well, so to answer your question, I was rooting for Crawford just as, as a fan. And then I thought he, really deserved that shot, and he had waited a long time, and I felt he was going to win. I didn't think it was going to be like that.
That was the problem, Bob. He made it look too easy.
Right. So
if it would have been a knockdown, drag-out fight like Leonard and Hearns, it would have been better. But the fact that, as you said, no one, and Jack will tell you, I'm the biggest Crawford fan on the planet, and I never foresaw that. I liked him to win, but I never foresaw it being that one-sided. But Crawford, I think he always knew he could beat Spence. And he knew that was the fight that he'd be remembered for, and he was going to have his A game.
Yeah. Yeah. But subsequently, what I'm drawing off of and making these comments is I saw a report and actually listened to it. There was some audio to it. And it was actually a medical there was a medical expert, a neurologist, I think, on this, I think a podcast, and I apologize that I don't remember the details of who it was, but they were talking about, the mechanics involved and how you can determine signs of neurological impairment. And even during that fight, he was not able to move laterally, after the knockdowns. It's very common now for, referees to, have a fighter do a step side to side. They are teaching that in refereeing seminars now, just to help them assess, where the fighter is at neurologically, their gait, so on and so forth, which is, we can go off on tangents, but that's incredibly surprising that Wardley was allowed to go on, because he was doing pirouettes in the breeze. But Spence, there were signs in that fight that he was damaged, whether it was, from the knockdowns or from the, the damage that he had, from the car accident. And even in his training, I think and we all know there's cases of people close to fighters, the team around them sometimes, that are looking for that payday for themselves, that will just allow it to go on. And look with, Muhammad Ali against Trevor Berbick, there's no way he should have been allowed in that fight. And he was already showing signs of impairment in his speech and physically and all that. But
why are they letting Spence fight now? He can't be better for that beating. I think he's got to be totally damaged mentally and physically.
Well,
why do they let him fight now?
It's the yes men around him that, they're getting paid too.
But he's promoted by the PBC, and they promote him in Zoo, and the PBC on the Al Haymon hasn't been nearly as relevant as they were some years ago. And this kind of keeps him in the game. It's kind of, for that weekend, it'll be a high profile fight. It'll create a lot of interest. Spence's name. And if Spence wins, he's in the mix for something. I mean, I know you're going to say this is a suicidal fight from Frank, and I'll agree with you, but they might.
No, actually, he's fighting the right guy. He's fighting another damaged guy who
Right.
might not take much for him to convince
I don't
Sue that he's going to lose.
I may ask Bob this, Frank, because Bob's from upstate New York. Whatever happened to Jimmy Ralston, the guy who was supposed to fight Jose Torres, what, in 1970 it was, I think, and he left the arena the night of the fight, just left. And then they had to get Charlie Devil Green to step in as a substitute. He's from upstate New York. Is he
You know what?
alive?
That's a good question. I'm trying to think if he's from Buffalo. I will have to get back to you on that and do some investigating because I'm not 100% sure about that. But that's a good project for me.
I'd like to speak to him, if possible, at some point. I mean, unless you do it, whatever. But I was just curious whatever happened to Jimmy Ralston, because that was really a bizarre type thing. I visited Charlie Devil Green when he was in prison upstate New York. We talked about it a while, and he said he drank a beer and had a hot dog, and they pulled him out of the crowd. I mean, can you imagine that happening today? A guy's having a beer. Oh, you're going to be fighting.
No, unless your name's Tim Tomaszek and they need an opponent.
And he fought Tommy Morrison, right?
Tommy Morrison, and literally pulled him out of the crowd.
Yeah, but was that okay?
Bob, let me ask you: do you have a?
And it was for the WBO title, the same one we just saw this weekend between Dubois.
The same one, yeah.
Which is crazy, but yeah, they literally a few hours before airtime.
Bob, do you have a lot of guys contacting you and wanting to give you content and write for Fight News and ask you how much you pay and all that?
Yeah, sometimes. And then there's a lot of kind of spam type emails that come through, looking for, I don't know what they're looking for, but they're not legit. So, we still have a core of, diehards that have never wanted to leave Fight News and stayed. And we actually have gotten a couple of folks back who I remember personally. I actually met one of our writers from Thailand. And when I was over there for a convention, and then I actually covered a title fight, a female world title fight that was held in a prison. And I caught a ride to the event with our Fight News' Thai writer. I don't know what happened to him, but for many years he was just gone, and he just found his way back to us. And then we had a guy in Denmark, Per Oka Persson, who I used to correspond with, and he's back. And he left. He had gone, I guess, over to one of our competitors' Boxing Scene, and a few months ago he came back. He didn't remember how to get a hold of me, and he asked a Swedish referee, Mikael Hook, who I'm friends with. I see Mikael at the conventions all the time, and Mikael asked me, and when he said his name, I said, "Oh my God, I haven't heard from Per Oka in a long time." So he's back with us too, and we've gotten some new legit guys, and a new guy from Australia, and then a guy that actually is a legit journalist, boxing journalist from South Africa, Clinton Vanderberg, and he's with us. So, we have some of the old diehards, and then some returnees, and then some new folks. So, and I've been heard there's some buzz. A couple of writers from Boxing Scene have actually come out on social media saying they're looking for jobs, and now I've heard that Boxing Scene has let everybody go. So I don't know if that's.
They ran an interview. I have an interview on there they ran this weekend. They interviewed me, actually, Boxing Scene. No wonder. You see, you're saying things are pretty hard up there.
And I saw that, Jack, and I didn't recognize the name.
Yeah, I'm saying.
Well, there's a big move towards AI, and just letting
AI. Frank
AI do all that, and that traditional websites with real humans are going to go by the wayside. I don't know, but that's not my plan. But we'll see what happens, But I've been talking to some people about that.
But I don't see where it hurts. I mean, I look at Fight News all the time. I look at Boxing Scene. I look at some other sites, I don't think it's a question of competition, one website knocking another off. That maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm being naive by saying that, but I think, there's enough to go around as long as it's a good website, good information.
No, I think it's a financial thing. You need ad revenue, and those guys, I don't know what they were, paying their writers and photographers. I have no idea, but I think that's what it is. If sponsors are still willing to to pay, and I know there's no shortage of sponsors. Back in the day, we had good sponsorship under Carl, with the networks like HBO and Showtime, with the sanctioning bodies. But now you've got Monster Energy, and you've got FanDuel, gambling sites. There's some restrictions. There's things depending on what state you're based in. For example, whether or not you can advertise, or have advertising from like a gambling app like FanDuel or whatever. So there's some angles and some workarounds and some considerations that have to be made. But I think it's still financially feasible,
I wrote for Boxing Scene back around between 2003, 2006. And all I can say is this: I stopped for the reason that everybody else would stop. And we know what that is.
Well, I'll say, for example, our Danish guy, Per Alka, he left because for his reasoning was that they weren't posting his stuff. They didn't care about, these fights that they didn't, involving fighters they didn't know about from Europe or whatever. And, we're putting all that stuff up. Whether or not it gets certain clicks, it's serving, it's a service for folks. It's a worldwide site, so it's not just all about American readers, and we have.
Bob, could you tell us how many people visit the site a day? Do you have an idea on that?
Oh gosh, a day. You know what? It really kind of fluctuates with, the news cycle, and if something big just happened over the weekend. So, it all depends. And we also, believe it or not, some of our biggest traffic is on the Spanish side of it, because we do have a Spanish language page, and it's unbelievable. And then even though so we're in English and Spanish, when there's a big fight in Japan, like with Inoue, we're getting traffic on an English language boxing website from Japan. Like, the clicks are unbelievable. So I think it follows the cycle, and there are traditionally slow days, but then it picks up again starting Thursday as you get towards press conferences, weigh-ins, and then a big fight on Saturday again.
One more question. Based on the site,
Sure.
Based on the site, would you agree with this statement? Boxing is still big worldwide, but it's waning in the United States.
You know what? I'll still say it's big worldwide. If I can break my answer down into two halves, I don't know about if it's waning in the United States. What I think is you have MMA. There's no denying that.
Which has lost a little bit of its steam.
It has lost a little bit of its steam. Dana White is.
We're running. Yeah, we have only 1 minute left.
Okay.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Bob. Finish.
Yeah, I'll just say that it's. I think boxing is holding its own in the United States, and I can't back that up with stats. I haven't really paid attention, but just the vibe and the feel that I have for it. It's not going the way of soccer or anything. I think it's still here, and I think the new kids, the new demographic coming up, has their interests split between traditional boxing, and I think a lot more young folks are following MMA than boxing. Okay. But I think boxing is here to stay.
Thanks a lot. Our guest Bob Newman tonight.
Thanks for coming on, Bob. Good job.
Thank you, guys. Look forward to talking to you again.
If you want to learn, get all your boxing information. Go there each day, fightnews.com. Thanks for coming on, Bob.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Okay, and
You too.
Frank, that basically is going to wrap it up for tonight's show. Great guest, great boxing talk. See you next week.
Okay, everybody. See you.